Uh, I know that we have kind of talked about this in fits and starts throughout teacher training, but I want to give you kind of a real world application rundown of how this book, even though it's definitely more than just a book, how it fits in our everyday lives now, and what you can really do with this wisdom to help kind of navigate some of what can feel like a world that is a bit of a dumpster fire on a good day. So, my hope is that as we go over this, that you can kind of dig in and see the similarities of, oh, I can apply this to my regular life. The reason I like to teach it this way is because I feel like with yoga in particular, it does us a whole lot more good when we can relate to it and when we have a place to put it, you know? It doesn't just feel like this esoteric thing that's hanging out here where it's something that you feel like you can never quite achieve the yoga thing because we're like living our daily lives and have Instagram and TikTok, and they didn't have that 5,000 years ago. So you don't know Um, how it all fits in, or driving on, in my area, the highway that is always crazy is 275, where you're questioning all of your life choices while you're in traffic driving 70 miles an hour. They weren't grappling with those things in the yoga space when these teachings came about. However, they can apply to how we interact with one another in the world. So, my goal here is to make this material as relatable as possible. If you have questions, you can unmute yourself since there's only 9 of us in here and ask your question, or just drop it in the chat if you don't want to unmute yourself. So let's get moving. Um, so if you have your copy of the Gita, you can grab it. You don't necessarily need it right now. But if you want to have it for reference and like to highlight or look at any of the chapters that I go over, kind of jot down notes to go back and look at it later, you're definitely welcome to do that as well. So the introduction here is the Bhagavad Gita is the song of the divine. It's a conversation between Prince Arjuna and Lord Krishna. So it's basically Arjuna having this conversation with God. Now, the word God, you can call it whatever, whomever it is that you worship, or whatever deity, God, Atman, Beyonce, the universe. I don't care what that looks like for you. You get to choose that, but choose that in this conversation. And remember that Arjuna is having a conversation with whatever that is for you. Okay, just to kind of lay the groundwork. This conversation is taking place in the middle of the battlefield. So when we pick up the Gita first, it can feel like you're starting in the middle of the story, for those of you who have read it before. And it feels that way because it is. It is basically starting in the middle of a larger play, the Mahabharata, which is this big 22-hour like epic. It feels a little telenovela. It feels a little esoteric. It feels a little like deep life philosophical drama all rolled into this big story. There's at one point where Draupadi is being gambled for in a dice game, and the Kurus and the Pandavas are cousins that are feuding with one another. And during this dice game, one of the cousins bets his wife, and she has this sari that is magical, and they're trying to disrobe her, but the sari that is magical just keeps um, the fabric just keeps growing and growing and growing, and as she's turning around, she's never disrobed. There's a lot going on in the story, but within that story is the Gita, and it's this crisis of conscience that Arjuna is going through as he's having this conversation with God, right? So think of it in your life as in, if you were in a time of crisis, I would venture to say at our adult ages, we have all had this moment where you're bargaining with the divine about, whatever it is that's going on. We're making those bargains. If you help me in this moment, if you could help me get this job, if you could help me get out of this relationship, if you could help me get into this relationship, if you could, let my car make it another month, right? Let me just make it to the gas station. It could be something as innocuous as that. When we're bargaining in these moments, that's essentially what Arjuna is doing. in this moment. Granted, it's on a larger scale that he's having this conversation because it's in a battlefield and the stakes are higher, so to speak. But what we have to remember is that these things also happen in small moments, even when the stakes are relatively low, right? It's not a big deal. Let's say if you are having a dinner party and the grocery store is out of your wine, but as you're driving to the grocery store, you're like, "Oh my God, please! I hope they have this because I don't want my guest to be disappointed." Right? That's a low stakes situation versus, I have some sort of health trouble and I'm praying to the divine that the doctor comes back with a good diagnosis that I'm healthier than I thought I was. It's the same type of kind of crisis that we're encountering in our daily life, but it just the impact of it for us depends on what the stakes are in that moment. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, good. Okay. So it's taking place in the middle of the battlefield. Now, the symbolism of the battlefield is that inner internal war between fear, purpose, ego, and dharma. It is the fear that we feel in a moment about how something should be, how our mind is telling us something should be. Is this what we're supposed to be doing? Did we make all the right choices to lead to these examples, or to lead to these situations? Now, in the examples I gave, yes, some of those things that are innocuous, but have you ever had the moment where you're like, if I just would have bought that battery last week, then I wouldn't be in this position with my car, right? I thought it could go another week, and here I am, and now I'm stuck, and right? We're in that bargaining state. It seems like the stakes are really low. You're minorly inconvenienced, but it's still that same, kind of self talk where the ego is like, I told you should have done this thing, right? Or your purpose is like, this is not my purpose. I'm not supposed to be worried about this car right now. I'm supposed to be living a life of luxury and ease. And here I am, stuck on the side of the road. It all fits in that same box because your mind is going through those same churnings, even when simple things happen within life. So, why this matters, the battlefield represents life itself. It's not that you're necessarily fighting within a family, so to speak. You may have, ups and downs with your family, but in the context of this, it's not the specifics of the argument that Arjuna is, or the crisis of conscience that Arjuna is having in this moment. It is more for representation of the battlefield of life, where we are called to act with awareness rather than avoidance. So in this moment, Arjuna is on his chariot and he begins to have this conversation with Lord Krishna, and he begins to question how they got to this point. He begins to question, is he doing the right thing? Well, now it's a little too late. Like the stage has been set. We've had all of this time to make a different set of choices before we made it to the battlefield. We've had all of this time to raise our hand and go, hey, maybe this isn't the best idea. We've had all of these things that have happened that have led up to this situation. So now we're in it. There is, in this case, there is no real going back from it. It's just making sure we're at this point handling what's directly in front of us and not trying to avoid it, because avoidance isn't an option. So that's what the battlefield represents. It is taking care of the thing that's directly in front of you. So why it matters is the Gita teaches that spirituality is not an escape, it's it is engagement. Now, in the yoga space, I know good and darn well that there are many of folks that talk about yoga in terms of, I'm going to go to yoga because I need something to hide within while my life is on fire outside. But for this 60 minutes, I'm going to show up to this mat. I'm going to feel as amazing as possible. And I'm going to ignore the rest of my life for this hour and kind of hide within the spiritual practice. Or you end up using the 8 limbs of yoga to kind of hide within, to say, oh, ahimsa says do no harm. So if someone is being awful to me, then I'm not setting a boundary in this particular instance. That's not how that's supposed to work. That do no harm, that includes self as well, right? We're not supposed to self-sabotage um or not take care of our own personal needs in lieu of taking care of someone else. So the call for this is to show up to the battle, to step on the field and be prepared as we can be, because right, being prepared is relative. It may be something that we're not ready for, but our work is to not avoid the thing. It's to actually engage in what is directly in front of us. Um, our yoga practice prepares us not to retreat from the world, but to show up for it consciously. So some of this is being able to consciously show up even though you know things are super duper messy, even though you know you may not have all of the answers, you may not have any of the answers, but you're still going to fully show up and engage in this experience to the best of your ability. um, so one of the things that Krishna talks about with Arjuna in this is you have the right to your actions, but never the fruit of your actions. So in our modern world, if we're going to put it in modern context, like we have a right to do the work. That does not mean that it's always going to go in our favor, right? So just because, um, let's say in the case of Arjuna, all of the right decisions were made, that doesn't mean that they don't end up going to war somehow. Just because all of the right decisions were made does not mean that they don't end up going to war. Just because all of the right choices were made, um, does not mean that it's going to still turn out that they win this battle. There's no guarantee in any of this. It's very much like in terms of college. I'm sure we've had this conversation before, or at our adult ages have encountered well, I went to the right school and I made all the right choices and I got all the good grades, and I played all the team sports. I did everything I was supposed to do, but you still end up losing your job because there is no guarantee. That work does not guarantee that things are going to turn out in your favor. Hang on for just one moment for me, please. Sorry, y'all, I had to sneeze. Okay. So just because you do that work does not guarantee that things are gonna magically, work out. I think of it in terms of business. Well, you'll see where businesses give you like their a prospectus, like this is the historical data of how well things worked for us. This is our future forecast. There's no guarantee with either one of those that things are going to go well. It very well could still end up being a complete and utter dumpster fire, regardless of the historical data you have or the future forecasting that you have. So there are no guarantees in life in general. All right. We can prepare, we can hope for the best, we can have all of the right intentions moving in the quote unquote right direction. Um, but it doesn't mean that it's going to necessarily work out well. The other part of this too is there are there are quote unquote bad people who have good intentions. What I mean by that is that person that is, let's say, on the wrong side of history, they don't think their intentions are bad. They think they're doing the right thing. They think that their actions and everything that they are doing should lead to a particular outcome, as we tend to think that our actions and everything that we are doing should lead to a particular outcome. Neither of those things are guaranteed. Okay. The quote I heard this week, which is why I'm teaching you this particular lesson because it really stuck with me, is that the universe is not moral; it's mechanical. The universe does not give a shit about your feelings. It is a very mechanical thing. What you put out there is typically what you get back. This is why we are not guaranteed that we're going to get quote unquote good for our work. It is the energy that surrounds our work is usually what is reciprocated to us. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. All right. Let's keep moving along. So What modern day battles do you find yourself standing in, either personally or collectively? Is one of the prompts that I'd like for you to write down and answer this question for yourself. I'll repeat it again. What modern day battles do you find yourself standing in, personally or collectively? Here, I'm going to drop this in the chat so you have it. Okay. So there's the question that you can reference for your journal prompt for later. And with these questions, you do not have to turn them in. One of the best things with the Gita is it is very much internal work that we are doing when we're going through this. And what I find is the answer I write today may not be the answer that I have 6 months from now. So I encourage you, once we've gone through this lesson, to go back and revisit these questions. You may feel very different about it in October of 2025 than you do come March 2026. Okay. All right, let's keep going. So the story, Arjuna's dilemma. Arjuna, a warrior, stands on the battlefield um, with his cousins, basically. He looks across and sees his teachers, his cousins, his friends on the opposite side. So he drops in a bow and is torn between this duty and his morality. His duty as a warrior, he has signed up for this job. Okay. He has signed up for, I'm going to be a warrior, and all the things that identify him as a warrior. He has all of the accoutrements that go along with this path that he's decided to forge for himself. However, when he signed up for a warrior, I would venture to say that at no point did he consider that the warring faction that he would be going against were people that he was related to. Or friends that he had known for years. Like that wasn't a part of the equation, right? So now he's torn between this duty that I said, yes, I will do this job, right? I'm going to uphold these principles and these values as a warrior, and I'm going to do the warrior thing, and I'm going to wear the armor and ride the chariot and with these horses and all of this stuff. This is who I am. This is what I'm going to do. And then it begins to, and that is his purpose, to be the warrior. Then it begins to bump up against this morality of, but this is my family. These are the people that I know. These are the people that I'm in community with. What does this sound like that's going on today? What does this resemble that is happening out in the world when a um, I'm trying to couch this in kind of words, when a organization, right, is hiring friends, neighbors, um, people that are within communities to police other people within that same community, that has to create some sort of moral quandary. Because these are folks that you know, these are folks that you've known for years. These are folks that you've maybe, like in my small town, I have gone to, um, I have gone to elementary, middle, and high school with some of the same people. And even now, these people are on my daughter's softball team, friends that I've known or people that I've been acquainted for years. So imagine now if someone had a job within an organization that is supposed to police the community. That is a hard moral quandary to manage and to go through, to have to kind of deal with, right? So that's how this is couched in like what's going on today. I'm going to pause the recording for just 1 second because I see a question that I need to answer. Okay, so you can understand how this moral quandary even relates to today with people who take on jobs. Now they're in a position of authority or warrior, so to speak, but the people that they're fighting are those within their community. That's an odd place to be. Now, the only difference, I don't know that in the modern day that there is quite this disconnect between, I never thought that I would have to fight my neighbors. I think if we look at this in terms of modern policing, there's a chance that in a modern police area in a small community that you're going to bump into one of your neighbors. There's a greater chance of that. So I don't know that there's a big a disconnect as there is in the case with Arjuna, but it still does have the same similarities. So it creates this inner conflict where Arjun struggles is his own. How do I act when doing what's right causes discomfort or loss? How do you act when doing what's right causes discomfort or loss? And then how do you determine what's right? Because remember, I said earlier, people who we deem, if you will, as bad, they think they're doing the right thing. Okay. This is the same conversation about, which it's an annoying conversation, but it works for this. People on food stamps should just get jobs. I don't think you understand what poor looks like. I don't think you understand just like how impoverished someone has to be to qualify for that particular program. Most of the time, people who are receiving that level of subsidy have at least 2 or 3 part-time jobs. And it's still not enough to take care of their everyday living expenses. So, this idea that there is a war on folks who don't have is a disingenuous conversation and argument, right? That they are somehow lazy and somehow not doing their part. That if they just worked a little harder, there's jobs out there that exist that are a hell of a lot harder than what any of us could ever remotely imagine. That people are showing up on a regular basis and that are showing up on a regular basis and doing day in and day out and still can't make ends meet. They got too much month at the end of the money on a regular basis. All right. But the folks that are saying that these people are lazy, they fully believe that they are right. They fully believe that mindset is the reason why, or that rationale is the reason why those other folks are struggling, when we know, if you have eyes and experience, you know that that is not the case. Now, let's take it a step further when it comes to the doing what is right. Hang on one second, because my son clearly has to ask me a question in the middle of what I'm doing. He just can't help himself. He's been waving at me for the past 10 minutes. So if I don't answer this boy, we're not going to make it through this lecture.
Thank you.
Lord,
Because it's yours, so I want to.
like he was struggling, y'all. He was not gonna make it if I did not answer him. Go talk to your stepdad. There's a whole nother adult in this house. Oh my goodness. Ugh. Anyway, so so they believe that they're right, and in that rightness there's this continuation of just doubling down on their viewpoint regarding this particular situation. Now here's the other thing of this that is scary and insidious, and it's only scary and insidious because it forces people to question who they are, and it's a very hard thing to do. So here's the thing: if people are forced to admit that they're on the wrong side of history, that their policy beliefs are racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, any of those other things, then they have to look in that mirror and go, what does that say about me? So this is why there's a disconnect in what folks can see with their own eyes, that people are struggling for jobs, that they're going hungry, that they're working, 2 and 3 jobs and still can't make the ends meet. Because if they admitted to themselves that those policies that they uphold are now oppressing those people, then they have to admit to themselves who they are as an individual. And most people do not handle that level of cognitive dissonance well at all. That's not our bag. We need to feel as though we're morally good and that we're making the quote unquote right choice. This is the crux of Arjun's struggle, because he needs to feel internally that he's doing the right thing. Do I, but in that doing the right thing, is my duty the right thing? The job I signed up for, the thing that I said that I would do, the thing that I've trained for all of these years, is that the right thing? Or is causing discomfort and loss for people that I know and people that I'm in community with, is that the right thing? That's a hard place to be. So, a bit off topic, but on when you have those hard conversations with people, if you're willing to have those conversations with people even these days, give grace where you can. because you're asking someone to literally deconstruct who they are as a human being in real time and admit that the things that they believe are harmful to other folks. This is what Arjuna is being asked to do. Everything you've been taught to this moment, everything that you believe that you were and that you were told, you now have to believe that you are a part of the problem and not the solution, because you've been told that you're the solution as a warrior, right? You go to war, you fight the bad guys lose, the good guys win. I'm a part of doing the good and the right and the righteous thing. Now he's standing on the battlefield and he's going, but these are my friends. I know these people. To put it in context of today, but but I'm friends with this Black person. I know them. They're not like the rest of them. Hence why your proximity to other races is not a means of solving racism, by the way. But so do you understand like how much of a quandary this creates for people in real time in their daily lives, in the daily lives that we go about? Is this making sense to everybody so far? Okay, cool. If you have questions, feel free to ask. If you can turn your camera on, I would totally appreciate it because that does make it easier for me to teach as well. Okay. The moment represents the paralysis of overthinking, guilt, and avoidance. The overthinking is, oh my God, did I make the right choice? The guilt is, these are my friends and family, but you want me to fight them. The avoidance is, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. I'm going to quit this job. I'm going to take my ball. I'm going to go home. And sometimes that is the right thing to do for you in that moment. But is it the right thing long term? Does it change anything? These are all things that he's trying to work through in the middle of this moment. It's a lot. It's a tall ask. Okay. So Krishna doesn't tell Arjuna to run or to fight blindly. He teaches him to act from consciousness awareness, not attachment. He is teaching him to make a clear, conscious choice and decision about what he is going to do next. He is teaching him, like I like to tell my kids, to not be a duck, right? Society wants you to be a duck. Put your ducks in a row. All the ducks walk the same way. All the ducks are the exact same color. All the ducks wear the exact same shirt. No one squawks out of tune. Everybody beats to the same drum. I've told someone about my son that was just talking to me a moment ago. It's not his fault. He's not a good duck and he does not duck the way you want him to. It's not his fault. He's his own person, right? So what Krishna is asking Arjuna to do is make a fully informed decision for self. Be a free thinker. Don't just go along to get along. Don't just choose the warrior because this was the path that someone set you down. It's very similar in life to where if in situations of family units where the dad was a doctor, the mom is a doctor, now the kids definitely got to be the doctor. And the kids over here going, I want to be a trapeze artist. And the whole family goes, but what do you mean? And is doing everything they can to keep this child from learning the arts because the arts aren't valuable, but being a doctor is. But if if that same kid is squeamish, they're not going to make it through med school, right? We're setting them up for failure. So in that child, that adult, that young adult has to be able to make a fully informed decision based off of who they are. How do we find out who we are? This is where our meditation and working on the other 8 limbs comes in. So we know internally who we are as a person so we can make a decision from that place and not go on to get along or just do something by rote or because somebody else told us to. Okay. So, um, and then not only is he teaching him to make this decision from consciousness and awareness, but then not be attached to the outcome. So the key lesson here is action itself is not the problem. Attachment to the outcome is. We suffer when we act from ego. What will I get from this? What will I get? What am I going to get out of this experience? Well, if I do this, this, and this, I should be entitled to that. That is not how life works. Instead of dharma, what is right? What is the right action in this moment? So An analogy that we can use is teaching yoga in culture that commercializes it. We don't want to stay silent, or we make sure that we're speaking truth to power even in these yoga spaces. That's our same battlefield that Arjuna exists on. So um, Krishna introduces the four paths of yoga to Arjuna in this moment. So not as poses, but as ways of being in the world. So he talks about karma yoga. So action without attachment to the result, doing the work for the sake of the work, right? So that is getting on our yoga mat and doing our sun salutations and doing our primary series, not because I want to do a handstand, but because it's the work that is called for as a part of this journey. The handstand may come, it may show up one day, it might pop up and happen, but the space for that to happen is all of the steps that I took to show up to the mat consistently without being attached to whether or not I get this pose. This is also what makes yoga um, hard and not hard in practice. Hard in the sense that your brain is like, well, I should be doing something else. I should be doing more. There's more to do. And and what do you mean if I breathe 5 times with the sound of the ocean that I'm going to be enlightened? Shouldn't I be doing other things to get to enlightenment? Don't I need to align my chakras and put on this cape and take an ice bath all on a Tuesday night before any of these things happen? No, you just need to sit and breathe. But do I need to hold my breath for 4 counts or 2 counts? Is my yoga mat the right color? Because if it's not the right color, then clearly I'm not going to read. All it is, all it is showing up to the mat and doing the same thing day in and day out. And then all of a sudden, cool shit happens. Like I wish that it was harder than that, but it's not. But that is the hard part because your brain so much wants to do more. We live in a I gotta go, I gotta be, I gotta do. And if I'm not going and being or doing, I am lazy, or I am, taking something for granted, or I'm not putting in my whole effort. It's a lot. It's a lot. Um, One of the best things that you could do for your active yoga practice, meaning your Ashtanga yoga practice that is very vigorous, right, is to take a yin class and force yourself to slow down. Some of the greatest accomplishments that you can make in your physical asana practice, your 6 day a week practice, is by calming your damn nervous system down, and it'll give you access to flexibility in your body that you did not know you had access to. And the reason that you struggle to have access to that flexibility is your nervous system is spending all of its time in fight or flight. It's spending all of its time in go, go, go. So it can't let go to get your shoulders from here to here. It can't let go for you to bend over, touch your toes, and your hamstrings to actually let go and have you find a deeper forward fold, because it's just in this holding pattern. And that holding pattern is important to a degree because it supports your body in a daily life and all of the impact and the things that are going to come at you. But eventually, that serves as a catalyst for burnout. So again, if you want to expand your yoga practice, take a yin class. Now, I will also speak to you as a student for a hot second. Every fiber of my being hates yin. All of it does. I hate it. I hate it every time, every time, every time, every time. For 10 years now, I have a friend that is like, you should come to a yin class. And my answer has been the same for the past few years. Why am I going to go tug on Superman's cape? I'm out here living my best life in denial. It is great. It is great. Okay. Why are you asking me to do shit that I don't want to do? Now, okay, that has been my answer for a very long time until the universe came and knocked on my door and said, "Hey, your hip's not going to get any better until you stop doing things." So then I had to do the yin class because I physically could not do something else. And you know what, guys? All of a sudden, my hip's not pissed anymore because I went to the yin class. So I too am on the same boat with you. All right. These are so, and being a student as much as I am being the teacher in this moment and being super transparent, I tell you these things because I'm sharing the same experience with you. Allow your body to integrate these things, so you're not holding so tightly to this pattern, not holding so tightly to this idea of it has to be this way, and if it is not this way, there is no wiggle room, right? Holding so tight to my purpose has to look like this. If it does not look like this, then it is not of value, right? Like, give it space to breathe. Okay. The In karma yoga, doing what is right because it's right, not for the reward or recognition. For teachers, showing up to serve students and not your ego. Y'all have heard me talk about that ad nauseum. And I'll use the same thing I always say: your students don't necessarily care about your handstand, they care that you can get them into one. So you're showing up with a servant's heart. How can you be fully available with boundaries, with respect for self and others in the yoga space? Now, um, you still want to make sure you have boundaries as a teacher, because the world can be weird, so you want to make sure that you are safely keeping, yourself safe, and also you don't want to be functioning outside of your scope of practice, right? We are not therapists, we are not physical therapists, unless you have that degree. But for those of us who do not, we are not giving free therapy for people. We are talking about the things that are within our lane and our scope of practice, and making sure we're honoring that on the mat. So having quality boundaries for your behavior, because remember, boundaries are for you, rules are for everybody else, um, as to how you're going to comport yourself if something happens. Okay, so um, we talked about this before. We talked about this quote: "To the work you are entitled, but never the fruits." Teaching activism and uh, parenting or partnering as an active service. So teaching as an active service is what's important here. Um, so the yoga of knowledge is something that Arjuna talks to, or excuse me, Krishna teaches Arjuna about. Um, and
That's the question I was asking.
so the path of inquiry, wisdom, and discernment. The path of inquiry is really important. And the way in which I like to approach it is a 5 minute morning meditation. And I call it, and I've called it this for years, is dating yourself. Okay. If you spend 5 minutes with yourself in the morning and do it on a consistent basis, you get to know you and you get to know what you like and dislike. It is so hard to be out in the world and somebody go, well, what do you want? And if you haven't spent any time for yourself, you have no idea what the hell the answer is. And then you end up all of a sudden mirroring what somebody else wants. You take that on as what you think is good for you. The only way to kind of get around that and circumvent that is spend some time with yourself and get to know you. One of the best ways that I know how to do that is that 5 minute morning meditation. How do I go about it in practice? Literally set a timer on my phone for 5 minutes, and I just sit there and breathe. And whatever thoughts come up, come up. Whatever doesn't come up, doesn't come up, and it's fine. But it's me spending time with myself. The reason I set the timer is because I could say sit for 5 minutes, and then what's going to happen is you're going to close your eyes for like 30 seconds and be like, was that 5 minutes yet? And you're going to get up and look at your phone. So if you set the timer, then you know when it goes off, you actually made it through the 5 minutes. You're going to get to like 4 minutes and 59 seconds and look at the phone and go, shit, I didn't make it 5 minutes. Just set the timer. It makes your life easier. Um, in the beginning, you can do it twice a week until you kind of get in a groove, and then every so many months, just add another day to it until it becomes a daily habit. I would not suggest doing it all at once, being like, I got to do this 7 days a week. And the only reason I say this is because you kind of set yourself up for failure if you're building a new habit. So start with 2 days and go from there. Okay, so learning to see beyond the illusion, so that Maya, the story that we tell ourselves about what's going on. Here's a prime example, and I'm sure this is something that we can relate to in the storytelling. You have an instance where you run into somebody and maybe they weren't necessarily polite to you that day. Instead of asking them, are they okay? You start to build sandcastles about why they were that way to you, how much they don't like you. They're not your friend anymore. Oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened. We have this story that we began to create. That is the Maya that kind of keeps us from being in the fullness and the experience of that person. Another one is, and I love this in reference to dating. I text him and he didn't text me back. Now it is he's not in it. He's not attentive. He doesn't listen to me. He doesn't really care. I can't believe he didn't text me back. Meanwhile, his phone fell in the toilet. He hasn't had a phone for 24 hours, hasn't gone to the store to get a new one, but you have created this entire story around why this person did not text you back. You have no idea if that's the case. Nor do we bother to ask. We're just like, I'm just gonna block them and I'm not gonna talk to them anymore. And they're the worst. Calm down, calm down. You have no idea what is going on for that person, right? Like, we don't know. We didn't ask. We didn't ask. Now, that does not mean that when we do ask that they're going to give us a quality story. And let's be honest, we can tell if somebody's BSing or not. So we're all adult enough to have that skill, right? But the idea is the portion that is on us is to ask the question in the first place. Hey, everything okay? If they tell us that they are, then we'll trust that, right? And keep it pushing. But let's not build sandcastles to our previous trauma in current relationships. It doesn't help anybody. It definitely doesn't help us. Okay. And then asking, who am I beneath all of my roles? Who am I as an individual, or am I playing a role as the parent in this moment, the mother in this moment, the sister, the brother, the daughter? Like, what am I playing the daughter, that the dutiful daughter that is supposed to do these things, even though I internally don't feel like people pleasing that day? Am I playing that particular role? Like, taking the time to unpack those things. So, in the modern teaching, we're deconstructing colonialized yoga, learning and unlearning and reclaiming the truth. We talk about that a lot around here, which you all know. Um, and then the reflection for this one is, I'll read it and then I'll drop it in the comments, or in the chat rather. How does knowledge free you from illusion? How does knowing essentially free you from illusion? So, in that knowing that is available to us, now we can get rid of that damn story, right? Like, once we know, and maybe boyfriend isn't a good example. So once we know, let's say our best friend, right? Once we know our best friend, they dropped their phone. They left it at home. There's another one. I left my phone at home on the counter, but you're calling me, and here I am creating the story about how we're not friends anymore, and you're never going to talk to me again. Once we get rid of that illusion, now we can see things for what they are. They just left their phone at home. So why am I making this a big deal out of nothing? Basically, does that make sense to everyone? It is that knowledge that allows us to not cling so hard to these stories. Or here's another one that can be detrimental. You have a running story that you're not good enough for something because someone told you that you're not good enough for whatever the thing is. Check in to see whose voice that is. If it sounds a whole lot like your second grade teacher, you can boot them from your head now and stop listening to them, and rewrite a story that is effective for the life that you are currently living now. Many a times I find, especially the longer I teach, the more I see this in repetition, that we don't go back and reevaluate the stories that been telling ourselves for years, and we also don't even take the time to evaluate, are they actually our stories in the first place, right? Is this something my mom said about money, or is this something that I actually believe to be true? Evaluate those things. Does my life look like theirs to some degree? No, not really. Has it been hard for me to do XYZ, fill in whatever that thing is? Or is it someone else's story about it and I've just taken it on? So, how does me deconstructing that story allow me to have the right knowledge to then be free of the illusion that I was living in before? Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. Okay. All right. So bhakti yoga is the next. So yoga of devotion, the path of love, surrender, and faith. Love, surrender, and faith do not mean that you do any of those things without boundaries. I can love you from over here, I can surrender to what's here, but still find my happiness in that moment. I can have faith that it could get better, but also have the awareness that it could also not change at all. It does not mean that you do any of those things without taking your discernment, your knowledge that you gained to that point, without taking either of those things with you. Does that make sense? Because we don't want to be like before, where we talk about people hiding within their yoga practice. Hiding within the practice is where we're gonna love, we're all one, and I have faith that the world will get better. And this is the one that I don't necessarily love. You know, hearts. What is it? Good hearts heal things, or people with good hearts heal things. No, because there's also people out there who think they have a good heart who are absolutely awful. Okay, remember, dictators exist and they think that they're doing the right thing. So this idea that good hearts heal all, good and evil is subjective to who you're talking to. People think that they're on the right side of history even when they're causing harm to others, right? Because again, that cognitive dissonance exists in order for them to be in that lane to go, well, I'm not like that person, right? So they can decouple their individual experience from what's going on for the totality of other people. And in order to be able to do the necessary gymnastics to get from one day to the next as well. All right, so seeing divinity in all beings. Yes, I can see the divinity in all beings, but that does not mean that I need to let all beings into my space. That does not mean that that person's divinity is evolved to a point where I want to encounter it in my everyday life. Okay? Y'all notice the theme of this is also take your discernment with you. So, because that it's important. Serving from compassion rather than superiority. Y'all have heard me say for forever that I too want to get tacos on a Tuesday like everybody else. In the story that I gave you regarding yen, like I am as much of a student and working on these things as well. Um, Even outside of me, teaching to you. So Bhakti can be activism guided by love, not rage, which I do think that that is really important fuel. So when you're pissed, it is hard to hear what else is going on around you, and you may miss really important things. But if you can take that activism and guide it by the full depth and breadth of love that you have for self and for community and wanting to see other people thrive and do well, that particular bit of activism I feel is very powerful. Okay. So bhakti can be activism guided by love, not rage. Chant, prayer, ritual are tools to to stay soft in hard times. Those things, the time that you spend with yourself in the morning, that dating, that kind of ritual of dating yourself in the morning, allows you to open a door to compassion and love and connectiveness when you encounter people throughout your day. That is the other thing that I found in that particular practice, just to give you a little feedback about it. When I do the 5 minutes and spend time with myself, the people I encounter in the day, it shifts something in the energy that I encounter within folks. So I encourage you to do the experiment for yourself and see how different your day looks as you go about your life. It puts you in a different space, place, and dare I say frequency when you encounter folks. So when love overcomes hate, the world will know peace. Um, we have to be mindful the place to which we love from, though. That peace may very well be an internal thing that is happening, um, and not necessarily an outwardly thing that you see from one day to the next. It may just be that you have found peace internally regarding that level of love that you want to give. All right. So number 4 is Raja Yoga, the yoga of meditation and mastery, the disciplined path to inner stillness. So this is showing up to your mat 6 days a week and grooving in that tapas, that discipline, and your swadhyaya, your self study, getting to know you, and doing it even in the times where you don't feel like showing up for the mat. Now, here's the other piece of this that I've found very valuable over the years. 5 minutes on the yoga mat is better than no minutes on the yoga mat. I cannot repeat this enough. 5 minutes on the mat is better than no time on the mat. Even if it typically takes you an hour to go through a full practice, don't forego your 5 minutes just because you can't do the hour, right? Don't let great be the enemy of good in this particular case. Like that 5 minutes that you spend breathing and with yourself is going to be infinitely better, especially over time in the long run, of you doing nothing at all. Okay? All right. So Arjuna or Krishna also talks to Arjuna in regards to living your dharma in this very chaotic world. So your dharma is your sacred duty or your purpose aligned with truth. It is a sacred duty. It is not the purpose of I am meant to be a teacher. Yes, yes, but what about that path is sacred for you? What aligns with the truth that is you? Are you meant? What exactly are you meant to teach to people? Teaching may not necessarily be that I'm supposed to be a K through 12 elementary teacher. Teaching for me meant I'm supposed to be doing what I am right now. Like, this is my purpose. Me teaching K through 12 was miserable. Um, can I do it? Yes, right? Because I'm a teacher at heart. But it was not aligned in the right direction. So, figuring out what your Dharma looks like is very important. And it's that sacred duty. It's not the purpose of I have to find my purpose because I'm waywardly floating through life. It's not that. It is the thing that you're more so called to do that kind of it nags at you even when you want to put it down. Number two, know that it evolves. It evolves as you change. Your dharma may be to teach, parent, heal, or liberate, and that could change as you change in life. And your drive to do that thing can change as you change in life, and it's supposed to because you're changing. True Dharma uplifts others and doesn't harm or exploit. So if you're living within your actual craft and your experience, then you find that tapping into your ability to be a servant and come to it with a servant heart is not hard to do at all. All right, so your prompts for reflecting on your Dharma is what is your Dharma as a yoga teacher? Figure that out. It doesn't have to be as a healer. It is what is your dharma as a yoga teacher in the grand scheme of things. How can you embody karma yoga in your teaching? So detached service, not for performance. We're not doing it because we're trying to get something out of it. We're doing it just for the sake of the experience, and whatever comes. How do you balance your personal peace with social responsibility? So that we kind of talked about that briefly in terms of as a teacher, you still need to make sure that you have intact boundaries in order to effectively teach and to have some longevity in your teaching as well. Okay, so I put that last one in the chat so you all can see it. All right. And then as we bring this down to a close, just to know that the liberation through right action, the battlefield is within you. The liberation, the moksha, comes from acting in alignment with your truth. The Gita didn't ask us to retreat, it asked us to rise to the occasion. Better to fail in your own dharma than succeed in others. So this is choosing your path. Remember, I said before, um, being a cosmic colored duck is better than being just a yellow duck because someone else told you needed to be one. So that is the Bhagavad Gita in almost exactly an hour. What questions do you all have, if any? Any questions, comments, feedback? Do we need help unmuting if it's not allowing? I'll just pop the unmute thing up there. So if anybody wants to unmute before we call it good. Does anyone have any questions? Everybody good? Yes? Okay. So what I'm going to do is okay, great. So what I'm going to do is I will download the chat. It'll get downloaded when I save this. Um, Good. I'm glad you liked it, Muffy. And thank you so much for being here. I appreciate all of you. I'm going to download this and I'll save the chat just this time since the questions are in the chat. And I think what I'll do is, oh, since I'm going to upload it to YouTube, I will put the questions in the description. Okay. So that way, if you want to go back and get the questions, you can have access to them there. Um, Yep, I'm gonna put the recording on YouTube instead of putting it in the portal. YouTube is so much easier for me to use, and it guarantees that all of you all will be able to watch it without having to argue with the Thinkific portal that is been hit or miss lately. Excuse me. Okay, so that's a good point that you bring up regarding dharma. This is something that you will have to come back to because it's going to change. Because I promise you, the reasons that you've shown up as a teacher now will not be the reasons 2 years from now.